So I think we can start, Lois.
All right. I just want to say good morning, everyone, before I start sharing the screen, see your faces. It's good to see everyone again. Welcoming you to our 2020-2021 LPAC Decisions Educator Guide training. Um, I think that I'm Lois Neumeyer. I work on TELPAS alternate, and I'm also our resident LPAC representative. I think everyone knows Jose. And Esmeralda, she's here. Esmeralda, would you like to say anything this morning?
Good morning, everybody. Welcome to our training. And it's going to be, I think it's going to be a pretty smooth training. We don't have much changes, but I'm glad to see everybody is able to attend, and I'm glad to be part of the team again. Thanks.
All right, I'm going to go ahead and try this sharing of the screen and making it as smooth as possible. So give me a moment.
I'd like to also make sure that Vanessa introduces herself. A lot of people have contact with Vanessa. I'm sure you all already know her.
Vanessa.
Good morning. Happy Friday, everyone. Nice to see y'all.
I cut you off, Vanessa. Sorry about that.
It's okay. I'll forgive you, Lois.
Thanks. All right, we'll go ahead and get started. Just a couple of things before we start. Your microphones are muted. We're going to take roll call and questions at the end today. The LPAC documents are updated documents. Most of them have been posted as of this morning. There are a couple that will be missing. The LPAC Decisions Educator Guide, and this PowerPoint presentation should be posted by next week. All the other documents, the updated documents have been posted, just as an FYI. If you want, you can put some questions in the chat. We'll be sure to answer those at the end or as we go along if they're more simple. So let's just go ahead and get started. I'm trying to get, there we go. All right, this is our agenda for today. It looks rather busy, but it'll run smoothly. As Esmeralda said earlier, we don't have really any big changes. We just have a couple little updates for this year. Our first update is that the title of our educator guide has changed. It's not the decision-making guide anymore. It is now the Language Proficiency Assessment Committee Decisions Educator Guide. For short, we will call it the LPAC Decisions Educator Guide, because that's a mouthful if you try to get it all out really quickly. It's a new name. There's a new cover. This is the cover right here that you're looking at. And like I said, this will be on our LPAC Resources webpage. It says the end of October, but I'm pretty sure we're going to be able to get it up by next week. The other new thing that I just kind of wanted to address is not specifically an LPAC thing, but it is our new student assessment help desk. This is going to allow us to improve our response to district inquiries. It also, for the districts, includes a searchable list of FAQs. You might be able to find your answer before you even have to send it off to us. And eventually, over time, this is going to replace all of the multiple email addresses. This will be the one place that it's the go-to place for all of us, for all of you. The link will be included in the PowerPoint, but that's it right there. You can see the arrows pointing to, when you go to the landing page, where to go. Student assessment, click on that. All right, we're going to just move into the overview, a quick overview of the educator guide. All right, so this guide is based on these two Commissioner of Education rules, the 19 TAC 101, subchapter AA, which is for STAAR, and also section 101.1003 for TELPAS and TELPAS alternate. The overarching responsibilities for the LPAC are these four here: following the administrative procedures in the guide, making decisions on an individual student basis, working as a committee to make these decisions, and also maintaining the required documentation. In order to be able to follow the responsibilities in the guide, the educator really needs to become, the LPAC participants need to understand the guide, and they need to review all of the sections. So the guide includes, it's broken down into these sections: the overview, the test participation decisions, designated supports decisions, other assessment decisions, documenting and communicating decisions. And if you looked at the agenda, we're going to kind of go through these. We kind of spread it out a little bit more than just these 5 right here. Let's talk about participation decisions for the STAAR program. The STAAR program has not changed. There's still STAAR, STAAR Spanish, STAAR Alternate 2, same grades, grades 3 through 8, math, reading, writing, science, and social studies, and then the end of course tests that are listed there. LPAC's responsibilities include making and documenting test participation decisions in accordance with the STAAR program. There's more information in the chart. That chart comes from the guide itself, and LPACs should just take the time to be very familiar with the guide. So for STAAR Spanish, we've gotten the questions before about what's the difference between STAAR Spanish and STAAR English. And really, it's the same. STAAR Spanish is the same assessed curriculum and item types, blueprints, the achievement standard alignment, and the focus on readiness for the next grade level, or the course with the goal of post-secondary readiness. Really, the only different thing is the language accessibility. STAAR Spanish helps students understand the language of the test. STAAR Spanish decisions. So STAAR Spanish decisions are not only appropriate for students in bilingual programs who are receiving their academic instruction in Spanish. Sometimes it might be appropriate for an EL in an ESL program. Some example types are here. These are not all the example types. These are just some example types. A Spanish speaker who recently moved to the US. An EL recently moved from a campus that had a bilingual program, education program, to a campus with only an ESL program. Or possibly a student in an ESL program who receives quite a bit of academic support in Spanish. For non-ELs, LPACs don't just determine Spanish participation programs for non-ELs and Spanish bilingual programs. If there's a non-EL in a state-approved bilingual education program, they can administer a STAAR Spanish if the LPAC actually determines that that's going to be the most appropriate measure of the student's academic progress. And this is in another one of the rules, the 19 TAC, Chapter 101, 105. Usually this is most common in two-way dual language programs, but it's not actually limited to just these program models. Now, if the LPAC does determine for a non-EL that they're going to take a Spanish STAAR test, that is all that they have to do. They are not responsible for carrying out any of the other LPAC functions that they carry out normally for English learners. When it comes to assessment decisions, sometimes they might be different for different subjects. They might do this just because of the design of the STAAR program. Maybe you're going to take, maybe the LPAC will determine that the student takes STAAR Spanish in one subject and STAAR English in another subject. Now, when an LPAC decides to do this, the decision to do this has to be well justified and documented.
Lois, if you don't mind, let's go back to the previous.
Not at all, Jose, anytime.
Usually the questions we get here are around SSI grades, grade 5, when the districts want to change language from one administration to the next. Since, the governor waived SSI requirements for retesting this year, we only have one admin. We don't foresee any more questions about this.
That's true. Yes, thank you, Jose. I'm glad you commented on that. STAAR with Embedded Supports is an online assessment. And there might be times when a student who requires embedded supports might not be able to take an online assessment. These are rare, circumstances. Maybe the accommodations can't be applied for the reasons that are listed. And maybe technology just isn't possible. Now, districts are supposed to make every effort to administer STAAR online with embedded supports. That's true, but sometimes maybe there's a situation at some point in some district where computers or technology are just not available. Jose, did I see you raise your hand?
Yeah, I want to make a point here. So of course, we're always going to have options available for students who need them, who cannot access the online test. But let's be super frank. We know that the paper version of embedded support is a limited experience compared with the online version. We also know that depends on the proctor being very active on the administration. We also know that students who are already in these situations are shy and they don't really raise their hand to ask for support. So I want to encourage you to talk to your people at the schools and practice with the online version of the test, because we created it for that reason, right? Because then the kid is in control and they tend to open those supports a lot more often when they're on their own, as opposed to having to raise their hand in front of a proctor. Sometimes the students are pulled into small groups with a almost brand new proctor, and they're not comfortable enough to report that they want help. So yes, this is an option, but it should be your last resort. Thank you, Lois.
You're welcome. But I also want to point out the note that's here. Just because the LPAC determines maybe the student needs a special administrations are dependent upon TEA approval. For ELs receiving special education services, they can participate in any of the STAAR tests, the STAAR Spanish, the STAAR L2, as long as the LPAC determines they meet the participation requirements. The LPAC, when there is an EL receiving special education services, they are required to work in conjunction with that student's ARD committee and when making these decisions. And there's a really good reason for this too, because this collaboration together, when they work together, it helps to ensure that the factors related to the student's disability as well as the second language acquisition needs are both considered. There's a note here that the decision may be made by key members of each committee when necessary. Look at participation decisions for the TELPAS program. TELPAS and TELPAS alternate fulfill federal requirements. They get assessed in listening, speaking, reading, and writing domains. The same as for STAAR, when LPACs are making participation decisions for English learners receiving special education services, the LPAC works in conjunction with the ARD committee. And the LPACs are responsible for making and documenting participation decisions for TELPAS as well. When looking at English learners in grades K through 2, this came up when TELPAS alternate came into being. And so this was put into effect last year for English learners in kindergarten through grade 2. These students who do not have an ARD or a Section 504 committee, the LPAC is not required to meet to determine TELPAS participation decisions regarding unmodified English language proficiency assessments. So for TELPAS holistically rated assessments, these are based on, holistically rated assessments are based on the student classwork and the observations, right? And the teachers are using those PLDs from the ELPs. And for K1, all language domains are holistically rated. And for 212, it's just the writing. And it's based on, the writing is based on student writing collections. So for TELPAS, holistically rated assessments and English learners receiving special education services, the students really are they're evaluated relative to how well they understand and use English to access the curriculum at their grade level, their enrolled grade level in accordance with their IEP. Now, there are some exceptions here, but students should be able to be observed and rated meaningfully in the holistic rate domain. Like all LPAC considerations, though, decisions have to be made individually and not consider that the student's score would be low. And then the ARD and LPAC committee together, they collaborate and decide the assessment in a particular domain is not appropriate, possibly maybe due to a student's particular disability. And any decisions that are made are recorded at the time of testing, and the student is not assessed in that domain. Did I see your hand go up, Jose? No?
No, but I think Karina has a really good question. I think this comes up every year, and this is about the documentation responsibilities for students who are receiving SPED services. So basically, the accommodation they're going to receive is tied to a condition, right? If there is a condition that is determined and recommended by the ARC, it has to live on the ARC paperwork. What we're saying is that it's on your best interest to also include it on your notes, as long as you don't disclose any medical condition. So then everybody's in sync. But you're right, where does it absolutely need to live? On the ARC paperwork if it's recommended by an ARC committee.
Thank you, Jose. Also, when considering participation, LPACs will be considering on a domain by domain basis. They just can't lump them all together. You look at each one individually. Any reasons for not assessing have to be well supported and documented in the student's IEP by the ARC committee and the permanent record file by the LPAC. I think Jose just covered that a minute ago. And then this is only applicable for those ELs receiving special education services who do not meet the participation requirements for TELPAS alternate. Now for TELPAS online assessments, we covered holistically rated assessments, but now we're going to look at TELPAS online assessments and ELs receiving special education services. It's a lot of the same thing. The ART committee works with the LPAC in conjunction. Possibly there might be a student receiving special education services who is not going to, due to that student's particular disability, cannot access a test, an online test. Of course, these are rare circumstances. Participation considered on a domain by domain basis. Again, just like for holistically rated assessments, the reason for not assessing has to be well supported and documented. And also only applicable for English learners receiving special education services who do not meet participation requirements for TELPAS alternate. Because if they meet those, then they're going to take TELPAS alternate. There are special administrations for TELPAS online assessments for the same reasons. They're under STAAR. There are the rare unavoidable circumstances where they can't access, maybe the accommodations that they need can't be applied. Maybe again, technology is a problem, but Jose explained that earlier. Districts make every effort to try and do that. Or maybe there's just, for TELPAS purposes, a student is unable to participate in one domain. So they need a special administration. The special administration of an online assessment form can be found in the DCCR. That link is active. When you get the PowerPoint, you'll be able to click on that. And again, as for STAAR, special administration is dependent upon TEA approval. Those approvals have to be sent in.
And I just want to point out that those requests or for approval need to be submitted at least 2 weeks before the assessment, before they plan to assess the students. That way we can review them and determine if it's going to be approved or not.
Thank you, Esmeralda.
And good point, Esmeralda, because I'm sure everyone here on this call has seen our calendar of events, that we were able to add 1 more week for TELPAS reading. So I think now it's close to a 9-week window. So come on, we have plenty of time to make those decisions, people.
Absolutely. All right, so moving to TELPAS alternate, which is a holistic inventory. It's for ELs in grades 2 through 12 with significant cognitive disabilities. The alternate holistic inventory is also aligned to the ELPS, and there are alternate PLDs that were created because these address the specific needs of these students. It is the art committee in conjunction with the LPAC that determines eligibility based on the TELPAS alternate participation requirements. And then the difference here between TELPAS and TELPAS alternate is that there are no domain-specific exemptions for TELPAS alternate. If a student takes TELPAS alternate, then the student is tested in all 4 domains. For K1, TELPAS alternate remains the holistic rating in listening, speaking, reading, and writing. So there isn't a TELPAS, there's not a TELPAS alternate for K1. It is just the TELPAS holistic rating assessment. Now this decision was based on our stakeholder feedback when we started the TELPAS alternate. The general TELPAS is accessible and it's appropriate for this age group. And also some considerations were that some K1 students are not yet identified with a disability, right? So, you know, overall there was a reluctance to kind of assign labels to young students that would make them eligible. Yeah, so say I see that, go for it.
Your last bullet is the key point here, right? So we don't want to run the risk of over-identifying just so they can participate on this test. So it was better because the holistic process is still appropriate. That's what we're going to use. Because if we were to have this alternative process and we identify a kid who just happens to be shy and doesn't say anything, as all of you know, removing that later becomes very difficult. So that's the reason we make this decision.
Right, thank you very much, Jose. TELPAS alternate participation for grades 2 through 12 is a little bit different. Grade 2 is different than grade 3 through 12. For grade 2, the art committee in conjunction with the LPAC has to look at the participation requirements. They have to complete that form. They have to answer all the questions. There isn't a STAAR alternate 2 for this grade, and that's why the participation requirements and filling those out are a little bit different. Because for grades 3 through 12, if that English learner meets the STAAR alternate 2 eligibility, then they automatically meet the TELPAS alternate eligibility, and they will take TELPAS alternate. Now I have a note at the bottom here because sometimes, and we found this out in the last couple of years, English learners in grades 11 or 12 have sometimes finished taking all of their STAAR alternate 2 EOCs. They've met their alternate 2 eligibility, they've completed all of their STAAR testing requirements. So we've had calls or emails about, well, we're not having to say they're eligible this year. They're not taking a STAAR alternate 2. Well, because they've met STAAR alternate 2 participation in the past, when they were still taking STAAR testing, then they are still eligible to take the TELPAS alternate.
Right.
One thing.
So the whole point is
all righty, go for it.
The whole point is to reduce bureaucracy and don't have you to do more processes if we already have evidence that you can use to determine.
And the only other thing that I wanted to point out is that we usually get the question about what are students who, and it really is those students that have taken TELPAS alternate that have fit that eligibility. They've already graduated. They're coming back just for transitional services or special ed services. And they do not no longer have to take, whether it's TELPAS or TELPAS alternate, they don't no longer have to take those assessments if they've met graduation requirements or of course for graduation. So that question always comes up along with the one that Lois just covered about students in grades 11 or 12.
So Esmeralda, help me correct my rule, because when people call me, usually I tell them, you are responsible for TELPAS as long as you're responsible for your credit requirements.
Right.
Once you have completed your credit requirements, you're no longer responsible for TELPAS. Is that accurate?
That is correct. But sometimes we get the question, especially with the student population, that they just come back for special ed services. And so they're at, sometimes they're saying they're in our school, but they're just getting special ed services, but they have already met all coursework requirements for graduation. So that's why I pointed that out, because we do get that question often.
Yes, we do. And some of them just are coming back for certain training experiences as well. But they have met all of their high school graduation requirements. And that's the key right there. Right, so these are screenshots of the TELPAS alternate participation requirements. They're located on the TELPAS alternate resources webpage. The new ones, the updated ones are already posted at this time. So for grades 2 through 12, the art committee in the conjunction with the LPAC, always together, they determine the assessment. If it's TELPAS alternate, they fill it out. Documentation of eligibility, like I said before, is a little bit different for grade 2 compared to the students in grade 3 through 12. For grade 2, they're going to answer all of this. They're going to fill out the form. But for grades 3 through 12, if they have met the STAAR alternate 2 eligibility, they are eligible, but they do need, the LPAC and R do need to just document that they are going to take the TELPAS alternate. So for students in grades 3 through 12, the ART and LPAC will answer question number 1. Is the student identified as in PEIMS as LAP/EL? And also initial the assurances in step 2. Those 2 things right there. Do they have to complete the entire form? No, in grades 3 through 12, they do not. Understanding accessibility, we put this in because it is the LPAC's responsibility to understand all of the accessibility policy documents on the accommodation resources webpage. If they're making decisions based on accessibility features or designated supports, they need to understand what can and can't be, what they can and cannot do. So the accessibility policies are found on the accommodation resources webpage, and they're also in the DCCR as well. Policies are divided into 3 main categories. 1, the accessibility features, which are available to all students who need them. 2, designated supports, where the team of people at the campus level document the student's needs, right? And make that determination. And then the designated supports requiring TEA approval, which are different. You have to submit an ARF for these. The accessibility features are listed. You can pull those up and look at them. The LPAC can pull them up and understand what is considered an accessibility feature. This used to be 1 page and now it's 2 pages as we learn how we can help districts and put things as an accessibility feature. We've been doing that over the last couple of years. For the designated supports, they're broken down. Yes, go back, Jose.
Sorry, Lois.
No, go right ahead. You are so welcome.
This reminds me of something. I'm going to steal some time from your presentation, if you don't mind.
Not at all.
How many of you have seen the new parent resource for accommodations we released last year? So basically, it's 4-page documents, depending on which is your committee, an ART, an LPAC, and 504, or RTI, and this is for parents. It's hard to hear me. Is this better? Apologies, I'm too far from the mic. So basically, the whole point is that if my child has an LPAC, I can print this 1-pager that has all the possibilities. I can read it before my meeting and come to my LPAC meeting with more information so we can make the best decisions for my child. So we had a lot of requests to translate that into Spanish, which I think is a phenomenal idea. The problem is, as you can imagine, we are short on capacity this fall. Any of you wants to partner with us to help us translate this? Boom, Karina's on the list. Who else? Come on, show of hands, people. This is our document. Wow. All right, Mary, all right, look. So please, if you think that you have some capacity to help us, this is not long, but we want to get it right. So it's not just translating, but sending it probably to this group to review. shoot me an email, put it on the chat if you're interested, and we'll set up something. It's not long, but it's technical, so we want to get it right.
It's a good document.
Thank you.
You're welcome. The designated supports, as I mentioned before, are divided into two sections. The locally approved designated supports, which LPACs can look at and make decisions for their English learners, and then the designated supports requiring TEA approval. The policy documents are organized the same way, all of them. So when you learn how to read through one, you've learned how to read through all of them. I know that yesterday Jose mentioned in the accessibility TETN that it's really important for LPAC members to have these documents in front of them when they're making designated supports decisions. And that's a really good idea. They need to understand the documents, learn their responsibilities, what they're authority for, what they're not authority for. And they can know that by looking at the authority for decision and required documentation section on the policy document, all right? Designated supports for STAAR. So that was just a quick overview of just accessibility. There's more to it. LPACs just really need to get in there and learn about the designated supports, understand the authority for decision part, and what tests which designated supports can be used on. Let's talk specifically about designated supports for the STAAR program. Their LPACs are responsible for making appropriate designated support decisions. All right, so that means they need to be informed. They need to get information from the content area teachers of the English learners that they are looking at. They make these designated supports decisions in accordance with the TA policies, and these policies are found in the STAAR Accessibility Educator Guide. And then I did already mention the Accommodation Resources webpage, or the DCCR, where the policy documents are located. And then there'll be the LPAC Decisions Educator Guide. They need to use all of these tools. These are all tools that they use when making their decisions. And then they have to maintain, they're required to maintain documentation of their decisions. When they make designated supports decisions, they need to be individually done. You don't gather a group of students together and then just decide that all the students get oral administration. They are done on an individual student basis because they're based on that student's particular needs for second language acquisition support and individual students' needs. And then whether that student is actually using the support in classroom instruction and testing. That's why it's an individual student decision. And then you also have to remember they're providing any kind of unfamiliar support. So let's just do it now for testing. They're not doing it in classroom instruction, but let's just do it for testing. That's not going to be helpful to a student. And also designated supports decisions should be made as close as possible to the assessment, because this takes into account the progress the student makes during the course of the school year. Their second language acquisition needs in the fall can be different than their second language acquisition needs in the spring. Decisions that are made in the fall for EOCs, for English learners, those decisions carry over from the fall to the spring and the summer administrations. The LPACs do not have to meet and do that all over again. Good, Jose?
Yep.
All right.
Did I miss something? Sorry.
No, I thought you were frowning, so I wanted to know what it was.
Oh, apologies, Sam. It's a failed attempt at multitasking.
Okay. All righty. For English learners taking STAAR in English, this has come up over the last couple of years. So we're trying to get clear and concise about this year. ELs and STAAR in English. So for English learners taking STAAR in English, the LPAC has the sole authority. They do not need another committee. They don't work in conjunction with another committee. All by themselves, they can make designated supports decisions for content and language supports, extra time, and oral signed administration. Now, for English learners who are taking STAAR Spanish, it's different. The LPAC does not have sole authority to make designated supports decisions for these same three, the content language supports, extra time, and oral assigned administration, because now that English learner is taking the test in their native language. So if the English learner needs these three designated supports, they need it based on something other than language support, right? It's for some other reason, a disability, a need. So there has to be a team, the Students' Art Committee, the Section 504 Committee, their RTI committee, or the other appropriate team of people at the campus level will work with the LPAC. Can ELs taking STAAR Spanish get these? Yes, they can get these designated supports, but the LPAC cannot make that decision in isolation. They have to work with the Students' Committee. I hope this helps clear up some of the confusion that has come in the last couple of years.
And Lois, can I interrupt really quick?
Of course, Vanessa, shall I go back?
So on the actual documents for those, you want to make sure that your LPACs read through the entire document for those designated supports, because under the authority for decision making is where it clarifies for an EL with a disability that the appropriate teams need to meet. So even though it says, for example, that I think Karina put it in the chat, ELs taking STAAR Spanish may be eligible for content language supports if the Section 504 or Art Committee determines eligibility. And that is usually in the eligibility section, but they really need to go to the authority for decision-making section where it clarifies who makes that decision, because they do make it in conjunction. And then making sure to read all of those special considerations based on any additional information that might be there to guide them in that decision.
Thank you, Vanessa. So designated supports and English learners receiving special education services, we've kind of talked through this just in the last couple of slides, but we just wanted to put that overall LPACs are responsible for making designated supports decisions for the STAAR program in conjunction with the Students' Art Committee, their 504 committee, their whatever committee they might have. And these designated supports decisions are related to the student's particular need for second language acquisition, and also maybe then they are also related to the disability or the need the student has as well. This is why it's so really important that LPAC committee members become familiar with all of the information on the resources webpage. Yes.
Yeah, if you don't mind, Lois, let's go back to 36. There's been some confusion every year around this, and I think it really has to do more with the reason for recommending the accommodation, right? And
Yes.
LPAC, so their only business is to decide where is the student on the second language acquisition process and what can we offer to assist them there. So if they need content language support because they are not familiar with vocabulary yet, if they need extra time because they have to process all that English, if they need oral administration because they're still struggling with reading in a different language, that's what we mean by, in these cases, the LPAC can make this recommendation. Now, the student can very well have another condition, can be a dyslexic student, can be a student that has processing disabilities, learning disabilities. And yeah, we have other committees that will recommend that. What we're saying here is for an LPAC, because they only are supposed to oversee where is the student in the second language acquisition process, these are the only accommodations that are tied to that. A student could very well need this for other reasons, and that's when it will be recommended by other committees.
I hope this is clarifying some of that, because it, as Jose said and Vanessa said, there's been confusion in the last couple of years. I think I got through that one already. So designated supports and reclassification. So if the LPAC recommends the following, this is the LPAC recommending based on the student's language acquisition needs, recommends these supports, oral administration, content, language supports, extra time, for any English reading or English EOC assessment, then that student cannot be reclassified at the end of the school year. Now, in the box below, it talks about if LPACs recommend the oral signed, these 3 designated supports for the grade 4 and the grade 7 writing assessments, then when LPACs are looking at reclassification, then they need to consider the degree to which the student relies on the designated supports during their language arts writing assignments or testing, because they need to know, well, are they really, really using these? And maybe do they really need to be reclassified if they're still needing that much support? The dictionary policy is another one. So the use of dictionaries on reading and writing assessments doesn't prevent an English learner from being considered for reclassification, not at all, right? But again, the LPACs also need to consider the degree to which that student relies on that dictionary. How much is that dictionary used during language arts instruction or testing when they're making these decisions? For any reclassification information, we wanted to put this in there because really we get a lot of calls or emails about reclassification. And so any kind of guidance on reclassification, please contact the Division of English Learner Support. We have the representation today. Thank you all for attending. The phone number, and that's the email address. And then also, this is just a screenshot of the 2020-2021 English Learner Reclassification Criteria chart for information purposes, and also the teacher documentation as well. But again, if you have any kind of reclassification questions, you should contact English Learner Support. Designated supports for TELPAS and TELPAS alternates, pretty short and sweet. For TELPAS, all designated supports decisions have to be made in conjunction with the ART committee, the 504, or the special committee, the appropriate team of people. And TELPAS alternate, actually, because it's a holistic inventory and the observable behaviors described occur while the students have access to their instructional accommodations, well, they get all of their accommodations. So there aren't any designated supports that need to be ascribed to them as well. Other assessment decisions, besides the participation decisions and designated supports or accommodation decisions, there are some other decisions. There are STAAR exemptions, but STAAR exemptions are for grades 3 through 8 only. We still get questions about EOC exemptions. There are no EOC exemptions. Strictly for grades 3 through 8 for the students who meet the eligibility criteria that's listed. There still is the English 1 special provision. It's not an exemption. It's called an exemption sometimes, but it's not, because the student actually has to take the English 1 EOC before the LPAC can consider eligibility for the special provision. So it's a good provision. It acknowledges the circumstances of the English learner. Maybe they haven't had enough time to learn English. They haven't been here very long, because these students are really, really still depending very heavily on scaffolding and supports, and they can't be provided the supports these heavy supports that they're getting in instruction during the standardized English 1 EOC assessment. So when LPACs make determination about the English 1 special provision, they have to maintain documentation, and there's a form, and we'll go through that in a little bit. And it says that eligibility must be determined in conjunction with the student's enrollment in English 1, ESOL 1. Oh, you'll probably hear my dogs. Obviously, they're back inside. Sorry about that. They're very excited about this presentation. We say that, but I also have to say, kind of as a notation, that we've had calls every year about a district that receives an English learner who has taken the English 1 course and taken the test, but there's no documentation of the special provision. So the LPAC can go back. It says eligibility must be determined in conjunction with the student's enrollment. Yes, that's true. The LPAC can go back and look at the student when the student was enrolled in the English 1 course and passed the course, because that's when you determine the eligibility. So I just wanted to make that note, because sometimes they think, well, they're not enrolled anymore in the English 1 course, but they had taken the course already. So the LPAC looks at that student's eligibility when that student took and passed the English 1 course. An English learner who qualifies as an unschooled asylee refugee actually may be eligible for the provision during that student's 4th or 5th year. Usually it's just in the first 3 years. But if that student is an unschooled asylee refugee, then they can be considered for the provision in their 4th or 5th year. More information about unschooled asylee refugees can be found in the Educator Guide. Talking about qualifying as an unschooled asylee refugee, here are the circumstances around that. And again, this is in the Educator Guide with more information. But the student has to be identified as limited English proficient as defined in Education Code, and they must be participating in a state-approved bilingual or ESL program. And then the student's permanent record file has to contain the appropriate documentation, and that documentation is listed here. And we've had people say before, what if we don't have any documentation? There's other information in the guide that can kind of guide you toward what you can do about that if you don't have this formal documentation. And then still, if you still have more questions, you can also give us a call. All right, now it's not just an asylee refugee, it's an unschooled asylee refugee, because that's an important part of that criteria. So the student's permanent record file also has to document that the student had little or no formal schooling outside the US and lacked basic primary language literacy when they enrolled, all right? And they also have to be provided designated supports and other, ongoing interventions by the district to meet these very unique needs. And then as of the semester of the test, the student still continues to lack that necessary foundation. So you have to look at all 3 of these things and put them all together as a package. ELs with parent denials, nothing has changed with this over the years. For parent denials, then the LPAC cannot recommend any designated supports, no testing in Spanish, no English 1 special provision, no unschooled asylee refugee provisions. If these EL parents have denied the bilingual or the ESL services. We'll just kind of go through some of the documentation.
Lois,
Yes.
apologies. Before you get into the next section, Karina has a really good question in the chat, and she's asking, what's going on with counting year schools with our current situation, right? So
Yes.
Our rule of 60 days depends on how a school considers an attendance day. Like for the rule of 60 days, we don't make a distinction between synchronous and asynchronous. So if that child was counted in attendance for you, it counts in attendance towards the 60 days.
Thank you, Jose.
And I'm also, before you get started, I was taking some time to look for this. Mary has a question about the chart that shows how the supports look in the classroom, because of course you don't have a computer system with the pop-ups and rollovers. We put a chart on the accessibility guide on page, I can never find this. So please, if you look at the accessibility guide, Educator guide that we have, the chart is on page, oh my God. It's always like this, right? When you don't want it, it's there.
Yes.
When you're trying to find it, you can never find
Of course. That's a Murphy's Law, you know that.
it. There you go.
So
It's
what-
called, it's
Yeah,
called.
that's the one that I was referring to. Yeah, Jose, because I saw it yesterday during the accessibility updates TNTN, and I really like that chart because some teachers struggle of, okay, so if I'm doing this, does that really mean that the child gets this designated support? So that chart, that's the reason I said, I think there is a chart because I remember seeing it yesterday. So yes, thank you. So what page number is that?
It's 21 is where it starts, where it's page 21 and 22. So basically, I mean, if you're using any kind of picture to simplify language, well, that's the same as a pop-up.
Sure.
All right, thank you, Lois.
Oh, not a problem, Jose.
And
It's good
thank
to kind
you.
of get this out for everyone. I like sharing all the ideas and all the information from some of the other TETNs as well. So for documenting, the LPACs have to maintain documentation of the STAAR, STAAR Spanish, STAAR Alternate, their participation designated supports decisions, also the TELPAS and TELPAS alternate participation decisions. And they put this documentation in the student's permanent record file. For any participation designated supports decisions done in conjunction with a special committee, the ART committee documents in the IEP, the Section 504 committee documents in the student's IAP, and then the other student assessment team documents the decisions also in the student's permanent record file. We've added this little note at the bottom this year, you know, with last year and COVID, there was a lot more electronic documentation going on. And so for any electronic documents and files, the districts just have to ensure that the FERPA requirements are met. Right, we have some sample forms that I'm going to go through in, next. These assist the LPACs. They're available on the LPAC resources webpage. We have separate sample forms for grades K-5 and 6-12 for participation in designated supports for TELPAS and STAAR. Can LPACs modify or reformat the forms? Of course. Just as long as what they do have still the components of the required state documentation. School districts also might require additional supporting documentation and evidence. So they would have to also just keep those as well. Any participation and designated supports decisions for STAAR and participation decisions for TELPAS have to be given to the appropriate testing personnel so that the arrangements can be made in time so that students do get what they need when testing for STAAR and for TELPAS. These are samples of screenshots of the STAAR participation designated supports decisions. There are separate forms, as I said. Grades 3 through 5 is one form. Grades 6 through 12 is another form.
Lois, you've
Yes, sir.
made these fillable PDFs now, right?
These are fillable PDFs. They were done last year. They're the same. In part 2 is the TELPAS participation and designated supports decisions. This is all one document. I've just kind of taken it into different screenshots. These are not separate forms. Part 1 is the STAAR participation designated supports on the form. Part 2 is the TELPAS participation and designated supports decisions, right? And then part 3 of the form is a notes section. Like Jose said earlier, you might want to make some notation about maybe the special committee determining designated, you know, certain things. Just use that to record any kind of information that's pertinent to the assessment. And then part 4 is about the LPAC signatures. That just means that they're affirming that they've made these decisions in accordance with the state policies and procedures. And then we also put just a notation there that digital signatures, this came up again in the spring, that they meet FERPA requirements and they're allowable. If you need to use digital signatures. Do you have to use digital signatures? No, but they're allowable. This is a screenshot of the English 1 special provision. Just a reminder, LPACs need to remember that it only applies when the student meets the eligibility criteria and passes the course. Those go together. Yes, sir.
One more reminder here. Remember that if a student only uses the provision, then English 1 doesn't count toward the number of tests. I mean, let me rephrase that. That the student graduates with only 4 EOCs as a requirement,
Yes.
right? However, if a child is going to graduate through the IGC route, then that English test does count towards the number of tests they have not been met requirements yet. So my recommendation is remember that we should remind students that they can change their mind, they can go back and take the test. This way, if their plan is to graduate through an IGC, it opens the possibilities for graduation through that route. Because if they're able to move forward, like if they take the provision in grade 9, by the time they're in grade 12, they probably can take that test and pass it. And then, you know, it doesn't limit the number of tests so much.
Exactly. And that's why that last bullet is there, because the student can opt to retake that assessment during any schedule administration, just as long as that student has passed the course, but fails to meet the passing standard when they took that EOC the first time. This is the student history worksheet. It's a multiple year record, has a number of school years enrolled, TELPAS alternate reading rating, test decisions, the enrollment, 60 consecutive days or not. It has on the form, it includes a place where signatures and the date can be done to ensure accuracy. There is some additional documentation that's done. The years in U.S. schools, I think I'll say answered a question that came about years in U.S. schools, because LPACs are also required to determine and document that. It's reported to TEA along with TELPAS and TELPAS alternate. It's used in the TELPAS alternate reporting and accountability, performance-based monitoring measures. And so it's just important to follow all the state-defined policies when determining and documenting this. Calculating years in U.S. schools, to help you understand that, there's a document to read through and help you understand how years in U.S. schools are documented, are counted, sorry, wrong word. And then the second bullet, just as a reminder, because we certainly get this every year. I think actually last year we didn't, because we had it in the PowerPoint for the first time, that Puerto Rico and Guam are not included in this count. I don't remember any. Do you, Vanessa? I don't remember we got calls about this one, because we have the bullet. There's data collection for the spring, all right? There's the unschooled asylee refugee data collection and the students with interrupted formal education. So these are descriptions of the kinds of things you might see for these students. These are not actual, truly definitions. They are descriptions. I'm not going to read through them. The LPAC needs to read through and understand them. So if you have more questions and you have a particular student and you're not quite sure, you can give us a call, but we usually just, say, just look at what this information is and make a determination based on that. Contact information for student assessment. The email is the assessment.specialpopulations box that many of you use. Again, we're trying to kind of shift toward the help desk now. And then there is the phone, Student Assessment Division. If you call and leave a message, they get forwarded. We will call you back. And then there is information that you might need on state assessments. There is a link for the assessments for English learners there. All right, so we've kind of gotten to the end. I'm going to stop sharing. Esmeralda is going to take over and take roll, and that will be your opportunity to ask any questions you might still have.
Hey, great job, Lois. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Esmeralda.
So I'm going to go ahead and take roll. So Region 1.
Hi, good morning, everybody. Karina Chapa, and it's 3 of us present from Region 1.
Okay, any questions?
I hate to insist so much on this because I know I'm the one every year talking about how the 3 documents don't say the same thing. The content and language supports, oral administration, and extra time. And I totally understand, and I promise I repeated verbatim what Jose just said about the LPACs focusing on the second language acquisition needs and not on the content needs, that the content needs should be done by another committee, but it's not in writing. So because it's not on the document, then people are gonna keep asking. So just a basic example, because I think it was Esmeralda or Vanessa saying, okay, they need to look under authority. Okay, so if I look at oral administration document under authority, it says for a student who is an EL, the decision is made by the LPAC based on eligibility criteria and is documented the student's permanent folder. So when we look at the eligibility criteria, it doesn't say that Spanish decisions have to be made by another committee. It just says that as long as the student meets a few of the bullets, right? The last bullets. So that's when people connect the dots, or I don't know if it's just a region one thing, but my people go deep into connecting the dots. So then they connect the dots and they're like, you see, it doesn't say you can't. I'm like, oh, because on the other one, on the content and language, it does say that, but on the oral administration, it doesn't. So I don't know, maybe on the PowerPoint, that beautiful statement that Jose said, you know, that the LPACs must focus on second language acquisition. Yes, it was a beautiful statement, Jose. But like that the LPACs must focus on second language acquisition needs. And if there's any other kind of need, that's when they have to collaborate with somebody else. Because I promise, otherwise I'm gonna keep pushing the same question for 10 more years. That's it. That was just a comment. I promise I'm not trying to complain, just trying to prevent
No,
the same
not at
question
all.
to come up again.
Karina, I have a question for you then,
Yes.
if you don't mind back.
Yes.
You're saying you want a statement added to the PowerPoint slide?
It could be on the anywhere, but as long as it has a TA seal saying the LPAC must focus only on the second language acquisition needs. And let me tell you why, and I'm so glad the EL division is here too, because our LPACs do not only focus on second language acquisition needs, especially when the child is participating in bilingual or dual language. I mean, they're trying to make sure that they're advancing in both languages to reach bilingualism and biliteracy. So for them to be told that for assessment, all you have to look at is second language, for them is like, why? If I'm also responsible for their academic performance, right? So I understand it, why? Because we're trying to provide support for second language acquisition needs. But I think that statement either on the PowerPoint or a similar statement, like the statement that you have on content and language supports, is beautiful because it says ELs taking STAAR Spanish may be eligible for content and language supports if the Section 504 or ART committee determines eligibility. Like it's more succinct, it's more on your face. It cannot be the LPAC by itself. I'm not trying to slap anybody on the face, but just to be more clear and more transparent about it, which takes me actually to one question that I've received so far too. So RTI is not part of content and language supports. And I think Jose had already answered me that question on an email. And because it wasn't an email, I can just forward it to them. So it's in writing, right? But you see that level of specificity, sometimes that's what people need, because I do think we had situations with oral administration in Spanish where the LPAC was involved in making that decision. And we want to prevent those circumstances from occurring again.
Thank you.
All right. There was a lot there, so let's break in pieces. I think it was great.
You have to say it beautifully, Jose, though. You have to say
Yes.
another beautiful statement.
Yeah, I'm going to watch the recording of that over and over. So a few things. Please don't ever feel like you're complaining. Our job is to support what you do. If we are not doing that proficiently, we need to improve. So don't ever feel like you're asking too much. Keep asking. If it is the right battle, we're going to help you and we're going to get there. I am very hesitant at this point to edit the policy documents unless there is an actual mistake, because by now they're everywhere in the schools. But what I can promise is to work with this slide deck that Lois has prepared, add some of the statements. We're probably going to run by you, Karina, and everyone else who wants to see it before we post it. We want to do a super quick turnaround, so that probably is going to happen between today and Monday. And at least we can offer that. You can have something in writing on our slide deck. And coming this summer, when we work on those documents, we'll make sure that you are looped in on the reviews. And again, we shouldn't wait for a TETN to improve our program, right? This should be our working group. If you have something that you want to discuss, even if it is a concern that doesn't have a proposed for solution, let's just visit, pick up the phone. If we need more opinions, we'll set up a little group and we'll talk on what is the best way to communicate this. Right now, the team, I'm lucky, I have a fantastic team, but we all been out of the classroom for a very long time. So we need you to tell us what, just like Karina is saying, right? Like we don't know what kind of discussions you have on your LPACs. And we're happy to play the bad guy if you need somewhere to put TA said this, but we need to know what is the right way to phrase it so that we don't create more problems. So let's start small, and we'll put a phrase there on the PowerPoint on that slide that hopefully can address. I'm assuming we're going to use the bullet we have on extra time, but kind of meddle a little. We'll send it to, we'll send it to Karina, and to anyone else who wants to volunteer to review it, please put it on the chat and the team will capture your names. And then for next summer, when we review these documents, we'll make sure to do a quick visit. All right. Now, I don't want to put anyone on the spot here, but we're a little jealous, right? We know you have your monthly meetings with Roberto's team. We should also have something similar with ESCs that is just focused on English learner assessment, those decisions and questions that come up. So I want to put you on the spot, and I want to volunteer you ESCs to set something up. Let's get those wheels in motion. For assessment, we already have a system. I think Liz is here, Liz Schrader and Melissa Shaw already put together a monthly meeting. We're actually doing a weekly meeting during the beginning of the pandemic because there were a lot of questions. Well, we should have the same setup for English learners. They deserve that. But it's the four of us. So we need your help. So if one of you want to take the lead and be our liaison and set up those meetings, boom, we're done. We all have Zoom accounts. There's no excuse. We can all work from, well, we are available virtually more often. Let me rephrase that. So I'm going to put you on the spot then. You're the ball is on your court. We'll get to hear from you when you organize something. Let's set up a monthly meeting when we can bring all discussions and how we can help you better. Works?
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Karina. Region 2.
Good morning. We have Leslie Shower, Alexis Gutierrez, and Martha Rose. We have no questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Region 3.
Have one in attendance.
Any questions? Any questions, Region 3?
Keep moving, keep moving.
All right, no questions. Go, Region 4, Region 4.
Region 4?
Good morning. This is Nicole DeSant Ryan. There's one in attendance, and we have no questions at this time. Thank you.
Thank you. Region 5?
Good morning. This is Jennifer Smith. There's one in attendance and no questions at this time.
Okay, thank you, Jennifer. Region 6?
Hi, y'all. We have 3 in attendance on our team, and we don't have any questions right now.
All right, thank you, Sandy. Region 7?
Good morning. We have one in attendance, and you may have mentioned this earlier, but will we have access to this recording?
I don't believe that we're going to have access to it. I'm not necessarily sure.
Let us work on it. We're for sure going to post the presentation, and we were able to post a recording to our other TTNs, so we'll let you know.
Okay, and also, I haven't seen the recordings from the DTC training that we had with you guys back in August. Have those pieces been released to anywhere specific yet, or is that still coming?
It's still coming. The target date for the ESC training videos is next Friday, which is
okay. What is about the 30th or so?
Yeah.
Okay.
So we wanted to make sure there was plenty of time for region assessment coordinators to do their trainings with their districts, and we wouldn't get in the way by support them. So by
Okay.
now, it's reasonable to think that all that has happened, so we can post those videos to support any training from now on.
Great. Well, we're excited to see them.
Thank you. Region 8. Region 8. Okay, I will come back to Region 8. Region 9.
We have one in attendance.
Any questions?
No, we're good. Thank you.
Thank you. Region 10.
Region 10, we have 2 in attendance and no questions.
Thank you. Region 11.
Hi, good morning. Region 11, we have 3 people in attendance, and I do have some questions.
Okay.
I don't want to keep harping on the ARD LPAC 504 piece, but we continue to get lots of questions about this. And so my question is, how do you define collaboration? Is that in a formal ARD or LPAC? So we're talking about between the committees, when we have a SPED EL and we say we need to collaborate with those committees, does that mean that we have to hold a formal ARD to discuss and document? I know in the LPAC we have to document, and the ARD will document in the IEP, but can you kind of expand on that?
Yeah, the first thing is we don't norm on what collaboration means, right? What this should be, a member of the LPAC should be sitting on the annual ARD, so they are aware of what is happening. They should take notes, so when it's time later on for the LPAC, they can bring the decisions on accommodations for the child and they're informed of what is happening. But you do not have to have a separate additional meeting. We have no authority to require additional meetings.
So what happens is we have annual ARDs happening in the fall, and the LPAC is supposed to document as close to testing as possible. So how does that work?
I'm confused there. What do you mean?
So in the fall, many annual ARDs are happening right now.
Correct.
But the LPAC, we are to document in closest to testing time as possible.
Correct.
So right now, if our LPAC representatives are sitting in an ARD, we don't know right now what's going to happen because we're waiting to
right,
see.
but the ARD committee is making decisions based on a student identified disability for which they're receiving services. All the LPAC representatives is doing there is saying, oh, so you're also going to recommend oral admin because of this disability. We make a note. Then it comes late spring, you have your meeting. We LPAC think that because Jose is still at the beginner stages, we want to recommend extra time, oral admin, and content language supports. And on my notes, oh, by the way, back in the fall, the ARD also recommended this. So it seems like we're in sync. He's going to get the accommodation of oral admin, not just from the second language acquisition point of view, but also because it needed to overcome a disability by what was recommended from the ARD. Does that make sense?
It does, but there's still a lot of complications and lots of questions we get from the districts, but thank you.
Right, so here's what my recommendation is. We can always help you if you give us specific concerns that we can react to. So if you tell me, hey, the ARD is saying this, how can I respond? Sure, absolutely. But right now, there's complications. What are the complications so we can help?
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Region 12.
Hi, this is Faith Foster. There are 2 of us, and we have no questions.
Okay, thank you. Region 13.
Hi, everybody. 3 of us, and I don't have a question, but I do have a comment. Thank you, Karina, for asking those questions, and Jose for responding to that. I will be happy to be any part of the conversations moving forward. I truly believe that having been at TEA before, I know that each department has always developed thinking through the lens of what's best, right, for the department in moving forward for our else. But just as a comment, I think this is where Karina is coming from too, and this is what I deal, at least in my region. The disconnect from the departments, meaning that if curriculum is putting something out that, just to give an example, as to what we need to consider for testing purposes to show biliteracy for our students, especially when they're participating in a dual language program, then there's a big disconnect and alignment. Then when we're looking at testing, because me looking at the presentation, it's very clear for me that the LPAC then is getting together to make that decision based on the student needs now. But then we're leaving in a sense, this is what districts are getting. We're leaving that language on the side, and now we're not giving the additive perspective to the student participating in the program, where we're being told that we need to add that additive lens to the program. And that's the only way that we're gonna show biliteracy for the students at the end of the matriculation through the system by 5th grade, because that's the only assessment that there exists. And so we're basing it off of STAAR. And so it becomes very convoluted in a sense when explaining it to the districts, because they're hearing one thing from testing, a different thing from curriculum. And then obviously we're meeting very often with the EO support team in order to move the commissioner's initiative forward. So just a comment.
Yeah, thank you for the comment. Totally fair. It's not something that is surprising to us because we hear all the time. That's the reason that Emily and Roberto are here. The reason that we try, Vanessa, Lois, or I, or Esme, trying to be at their TETNs. We're doing the same with special ed. So across the agency, we're trying to collaborate a lot more. I actually have weekly meetings with curriculum now to address exactly what you just said. It's a big, complex operation, so change slow, but it happens. And I think we're doing better, right? Speaking for Roberto's team, I don't think we've ever been as involved as we have in the past year, which is great. It's fantastic. Should have been there all along. But like I said, you know, we can only get better, right? As long as we're getting better, things are moving on the right direction. A quick side note, poor Esmeralda, she gets kicked out, so she feels horrible. She's trying to reconnect. So it's not that she didn't like your question. She just lost her internet. Lois, you want to continue with the roll call?
I would be more than happy to continue with the roll call. Remind me what region we're at.
Region 14.
13. It's 14 is next.
That's what I thought, but I just wanted to make sure. Region 14.
Good morning. This is Andrea Smith from Region 14. We have 1 in attendance and we have no questions.
No questions. Thank you so much. Region 15.
Good morning, everybody. Mary here from Region 15 San Angelo. I'm the only one in attendance. Sorry again that I was late, but we're actually doing our last round of DTC training, and I am the regional testing coordinator for Region 15. So I needed to start it off and get my portion taken care of, and I'm fixing to have to jump off to start the TELPAS portion, but I did make it. And again, I still just want to volunteer to help translate that one document and have those conversations, because they are beneficial and helpful to our parents and to our teachers to use the correct even wording and vocabulary that needs to be consistent all the way across from curriculum into assessment into our LPAC documentation as well. So thank you and count me in, and it's good to see everybody and happy Friday.
Thank you so much.
And
All right,
I have everybody, if you commented in the chat that you want to be included, I have you marked down. So y'all are all on there.
Great, Vanessa. Thank you. Thank you. Region 16.
Good morning, everyone. Region 16 has 2 in attendance and we have no questions. And thank you all for all the information.
Thank you. Thank you. Have a good day. Region 17.
Good morning, everybody. This is Elda with Region 17, and we had 3 in attendance. No questions at this time.
All right, great. Region 18.
Good morning. This is Maria Marta with Region 18. It's just me in attendance today, and no questions at this point. And also, please, I want to volunteer for the translation, so I'll put it in the chat right now. Thank you.
Great. That helps us capture everyone. Region 19.
Good morning, everyone. This is Amy Avina from Region 19. We have 2 in attendance, and I just wanted to say thank you for everything you all do. Jose, your team, Roberto, your team, you guys are so awesome. So we really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. Region 20.
Hi, good morning. This is Maggie De Los Santos with Region 20, and there's 2 of us in attendance, and we have no questions. Thank you.
And no questions. All right, I guess that's it. We had to go back to one of the regions. I can't remember which one it was. Vanessa, did you capture that or did?
If we didn't catch your attendance, would you please speak up?
It was Region 8.
Was it? Thank you, Roberto. Region 8, are you there? Region 8, if you're there and just having trouble with your mic or something, you can just send your attendance to the special assessment.special populations email box and your questions there as well. And we'll be sure to get back with you on that. All right, thank you everyone. We appreciate your time. We know these are really, really busy. It's a Friday, which usually seem to be busier for some reason. They should be actually the least busy, but they're not. I hope everyone has a wonderful weekend. Cold front's coming, yay, get those sweaters out, woohoo. I'm excited about that. All right, thank you so much. Have a good day. Bye.